Hello, this is Kelly Giebler, and this is my final for our practicum, preparing students to be citizens of the future. This is fall semester 2012. Here is my table of contents, going from the personal introduction all the way to my signed form. In my personal introduction, it talks a little bit about who I am, the fact that I did my practicum at Roosevelt and Holy Family, graduated in 2009, and I'm ready to be done with my master's. I have a 2-year-old boy named Ryan, and he's kept me very busy this semester. Personal goals to be achieved. I believe that positive results come from positive thinking, and I've learned a lot with my time in my practicum and with all the administrators that I've been with. Here's my philosophy statement, along with my descriptions of major objectives. Activity number 1 was my initial meeting with both of my supervising principals. The first one I spoke with was Mr. Lee Keffer at Roosevelt Elementary School, and then Mrs. Rachel Wentling at Holy Family Elementary. I got to look at some handbooks and went over the teacher's handbook along with the websites and got tours of the school. Here are both of the principals I have been working with. Activity number 2 was my Ben Franklin activity, where I got to go back up to Fort Hays and watch this performance. 5th grade students were brought to it, and it took place in the auditorium as well as in the library up at Fort Hays. Here are some pictures of that activity. Activity number 3 was my interview with the CPA in Salina, Kansas. I learned a lot from Mr. David Olvers. He's been an auditor for the schools for more than 35 years, and he had lots to talk about. He talked about how to be responsible as an administrator. And there's a picture of Mr. David Olvers. Activity 4 was an interview with Deb Needens from Salina Public Schools. She's a library media specialist, and she had a lot to say about how tough it is for librarians at this time, as more and more is being put on the internet and books are being used less and less, although she does feel it's extremely important for students. Especially with all the testing that's still being done today. In the next 5 years, she predicts there to be a lot of changes with electronic books being out there, and there will be fewer librarian positions available. And she thinks that she will be the one to retire in about 3 to 6 years, leaving fewer qualified librarians available. There she is. Activity number 5 was district material review. And I got to look at a whole bunch of data on USD 489 and include that in my PowerPoint. Activity 6 was an interview with a Mrs. Annie Hokeman, the Cisco director of Kansas Wesleyan University in Salina. She also is an MBA assistant professor in computer studies. She knows a lot about technology and how to implement in a classroom, and how important she thinks it is for teachers and administrators to continue using this. And she especially feels that in the next 5 years there's only going to be more and more technology available and e-books for the students to use, and is excited about that. Activity 7 was a multicultural interview I did with a Miss Kathy tongue. She is married to Justin Van Rooney, and they have 2 kids who attend school and preschool, and she is originally from Taiwan, and he is from South Africa. And they have a very diverse culture in their family. Activity 8, I observed bus duty and dismissal with Miss Rachel Wentling at Holy Family Elementary. And it is quite the procedure. It takes a little bit of effort to get it to run smoothly, and she has some help. Activity 9 was an interview I did with Mr. David Kramer of Kansas Wesleyan University in Salina, and he has a PhD and a professor of computer studies. And he believes that technology in the classroom is very essential, and he helps to bring technology to the classroom. Activity 10 was the Title I reading. I went to Roosevelt Elementary and met with reading recovery teacher Kay Shippey and got to watch her work one-on-one with a student. And she worked with chunking and sorting letters and reading books. And I learned quite a bit about the reading recovery process. And she has been a teacher for several years and thinks that has given her a lot of support in learning the reading recovery and is able to teach that to students. Activity 11 was lunch duty, where I got to meet with my supervising principal, Mr. Keffer, from Roosevelt, and we spent a couple hours in the lunchroom. And I got to know quite a few students and staff members, and it was great to see that all come together. Activity 12 is football games, where I spent a big chunk of my time. I think it's very important as an administrator to be involved in the schools and cheer your team on to victory. Activity 13, continuous improvement activity, which I believe was done in my data class as well. Activity 14 was Red Wheel Fundraiser, which I got to observe over at Holy Family and got to participate in sorting all that frozen food. Activity 15 was the pet blessing done at Holy Family. There were several local priests there to bless real and stuffed animals for the students, staff, and parents. I thought this was a great way to join the community and the school. Activity 16, information research, which I gathered at the district level, and was able to find quite a bit of information on USD 489 in our high school, 2 middle schools, and 5 elementary. Activity 17 was demographic data, which was a requirement of my data class, and was able to find lots of information again on our great district. Activity 18 is a very memorable activity for me, and it was our uniform committee meeting. I observed for several hours how this meeting was conducted and watched my supervising principal handle herself very well at this meeting, as she was a little bit attacked by some of the parents who didn't like the rules. Activity 19 is a lecture I attended on the top 10 mistakes principals make by Dr. Carol Alvers. And there's the 10 mistakes right there. Activity 20, Three Little Kittens, which I went to for Roosevelt Elementary, and it had kindergarten and first grade students at Beach Schmidt watching this musical. And here was a video made from this musical. And here are some pictures from the musical. Activity 21 was an interview I did with a learning disabled research teacher and early child special education consultant, Libby Charvat from Salina, Kansas. And she had a lot to say, especially about students that have ADD and how that's being recognized in the classroom as a special need and many of the challenges that are involved. She's a little worried about misdiagnosing and over prescribing drugs and would like to see that to be better watched in the future. Activity 22 were parent-teacher conferences that I attended at the high school level in Ellis, Kansas. And I met with several parents and staff and got to see what it was like from the administration side of view on how to put one of those on. Activity 23 was an interview I did with Gary White, assistant high school principal from Salina, Kansas. Met with him about special needs children. Got to hear what he had to say about that. Activity 24 was a leadership survey that I helped research and write for Salina High School South. Here is the survey that we created in regards to leadership and what makes a good leader and what traits are in a good leader. Assignment 25 consisted of all my classroom observation, and that addressed all standards and all goals. Went on for several months and took at least 30 hours to complete. Here's an example of my classroom observation rubric. Pictures I have to go with that of these wonderful students. Activity 26 is a PowerPoint over motivating computer students. I reviewed the presenter and interviewed him, Mr. Nolan Alvers, with an MBA, Senior Technical Analysis, from Kansas City, Missouri, over different types of computer students and how to motivate that particular type. Activity 27 came from my data class, and it is about Jeff Edmondson, and he has some great information to put out there about being a leader and what it takes to talk the talk and walk the walk. And this video can be found on YouTube. Activity 28 was an ESL interview that I did in Garden City, Kansas, with the Miss Emily Watkins. Here is my summary reflection. Bibliography used, and my signed evaluation form. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and I had a wonderful semester working with all of you, and I have learned a lot, and I'm excited to graduate and become an administrator.